You have a TV?
No. I just like to read the TV guide. Read the TV guide. You don't need a TV.
Television addict! Television addict! Television addict!
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wednesday. It's time for a brand new edition of TV Guidance Counselor. Welcome to spring, sort of. I don't know what's going on with the world, and I realize that I'm in New England and that weather is strange here. But winter has just decided that no, it's not going home, and it doesn't care that the bar is closed, and we're going to have to kick them out of there. So, eventually we may get a spring here. But you're not here to hear about weather. It's Ken Reed, your TV guidance counselor. You're here to hear. You're here to hear. That is a difficult... I know it sounds the same, but it is a difficult thing to say. You are here to hear about classic television. And before we get into my episode today with my excellent guest, Nell Scovell, I want to thank everybody who came out to the live TV Guidance Counselor for New York Podfest and New York Podfest for doing the show. And thanks to Harrison Greenbaum and Don Well for being my guests on that show. Look for that show soon. And it was a lot of fun. Those of you who also said hello and picked up our, I don't want to say exclusive because I still have some left, but we made enamel pins just for this event. I tried to go something New York themed, so I went with tiny recreations of the Dewey High Hooters varsity jackets as seen on Growing Pains and Just the 10 of Us, since that took place on Long Island, which is in New York, but you knew that. Anyway, that was a great time. I still have some of those pins left, so if people would like some, just go to iCanRead.com. I think I have them up there for $12, which includes shipping. They are very fun. Also, our other pins and all kinds of stuff is on there too. In addition, this weekend, I will be in Pasadena for Monster Palooza. I'll be hanging out at the Monsters Are Good booth, so come find us. Have you seen that Match.com ad with that woman? She goes, "Come find me," and it's really annoying. And now when I say "come find us" or "find anything," I want to say it in that voice, and I'm sorry. But anyway, come find me at Monster Palooza. Say hello. I know a lot of you are in that area, and that's a great con. I'll be having fun there. And I am doing Denver Comic Con in June, which is a few months off, and I'll tell you more about that later. But anyway, today's episode, my guest is writer Nell Scovell. You know her by her work, even if you may not know her by her name. She was the creator of Sabrina the Teenage Witch, the TGIF staple, did the first season of that, which is a great show. Wrote for everything. It's The Simpsons. She wrote on NCIS, Murphy Brown, Newhart, which obviously is big for me, Coach, Charmed, just everything. She's got a new book out called Just the Funny Parts. It's very, very good. If you like this show, you will love this book. It manages to be a memoir as well as sort of a how-to instructional book on how to write. And it is very, very good. Definitely pick this up as soon as you possibly can. In fact, you know what? Just pause this right now, buy the book, and then come back. I'll wait. But she's amazing, and she's from the Boston area, and I have wanted to talk to her for a long time, and in fact did get to. So you're about to hear my chat with her. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy today's episode of TV Guidance Counselor with my guest, Nell Scovell.
TV is my friend, and it has been always there for me in time of need.
Nell Scovell, how are you?
I'm well. What a clever idea. I love this idea.
Oh, thank you. It's a good excuse for hoarding. People used to ask me why I had all these TV guides, and the stock line I used to go with was as alibis. Where was I on the night of June 5th? I was watching Columbo. But now I have a legitimate reason.
Alibi/door stocks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I couldn't get out of my house because of the TV guides in front of the door, so clearly I could not have committed this crime. But I'm very excited to talk to you because I have a real, and I mean this as a compliment, not an insult by associating you with me, but I have a real kinship to you and your work in that we are both grew up in Massachusetts, are sci-fi fans, non-drinkers, and you've worked on so many shows that I've enjoyed. And aside from the fact that you're very successful and went to Harvard, very simple.
It's like looking in a mirror.
It really is. So similar. But, the book is great, and I really enjoyed it. I've recommended it to a bunch of people. And I applied you with a whole sort of stack of early to mid to late 70s TV guides from New England. And you confessed that your home was very sort of TV strict.
We were allowed half an hour of TV a day, but you could save it up because if you wanted to watch the Marx Brothers on channel 56 on Saturday morning, you needed to not watch all week.
That's 4 days.
That's 4 days. It was worth it.
You're a big fan of the older stuff too. Like I remember you tell that story about going to Marx Brothers.
The writer Irving Brecker lived to be 94, and when he was in his youth at 92, he came and spoke at the Aero Theater, which is right down the street in Santa Monica where I lived. It was amazing. He wrote At the Circus and Go West. So the setup was we watched At the Circus, and then they brought Irv on stage. And he opens with this. He said, my wife tells me the Marquis says Irving Brecker live. That'll be a surprise to my doctors.
Which is a classic Marx Brothers style joke, too.
So I just fell in love. And then he proceeds to rail against the casting of a movie that's,
1935.
60 years old. And he's still mad at the producers. And he literally said, I could have had Kitty Carlisle. And I thought, if he can hold on to that anger for that long, we need to be friends.
Very New England of him.
Yes, it was.
So many of us are fueled by spite. I'm like, spite is the number one driving force in people in the Boston area. So that's.
But imagine sitting in an audience and hearing laughs for a joke you wrote 60 years earlier.
It's amazing that you're like, yep, that formula is rock solid.
Irv, the last chapter of my book, Just the Funny Parts, starts off with one of my favorite Irv lines, because he often gave me advice, including, don't die, it interferes with everything.
That is a very solid piece of advice.
Yeah, he was wonderful.
You've managed to befriend and have sort of mentors in a lot of ways that are some people that are like Barry Kemp.
Barry.
These amazing people.
One of the things that bothers me is that the media will decide that someone is a superstar in TV, right, and then it feeds on itself because they do articles about that person, then other people read about them. So Barry Kemp creates back-to-back Newhart and Coach.
Yeah.
He's on the air, I think, for 20 straight years.
10 seasons on both, yeah.
With these shows. Previously wrote some of the best episodes of Taxi.
Yep.
I mean, his nickname on Taxi, where you have Jim Brooks and all these amazing writers, was Mr. Funny Pants. So not only, too, is he just a great creator of character and a great showrunner, but the funniest guy in the room.
But also, to me, got that bittersweet empathy thing that all those shows carried. Even Newhart, when it got...
Yeah.
Because you were on the last season?
I was on the final season,
which is
the
the
ninth season.
Weirdest season. Like that.
Right.
Like I have a theory that all shows that go more than 5 seasons get bizarre because they've kind of run out of things to do, so they just get super weird.
Oh, I totally agree with that. And I have been on those shows.
Yeah, where they're like, oh, whatever. And that final season of Newhart is bonkers. It's almost like a season 0 of Get a Life. Because a lot of the writers were over there too.
Oh, that's true.
Was Merkin?
Well, Merkin was gone, but he had shifted the show to this very absurdist place,
Marjorie
which is not.
Gross, I think, went over with him. Was it Marjorie Gross or Mary Gross?
Marjorie,
yeah.
She's funny. No, when I was there, Bob Benditson was very much shaping the show, and he then went on to Home Improvement, which was kind of a wacky show.
Which sort of, but it's still, Newhart, even in that final season, still had that. The characters were empathetic and still well-rounded characters, even though very silly things were like a baby's running a TV station, and it's still very simple stuff.
Stephanie and Michael were
cartoonish. Scolari has a line, I think in that season, he comes in and he says to Dick and Mary Friend. He goes, "Hello, Dick, Lady Dick," and you can see them laugh, and I'm like, that must have been the least laughing take they could use because it's amazing.
I have this weird memory of having. We were sitting in the courtyard at a picnic table having lunch on Newhart, right in front of the 30-something house, which was right on the lot. And Peter Scolari joined us, and I said something about W.C. Fields because he's got this movie, $1 Million Legs, which is one of the funniest shorts ever made. So I brought it up, and Peter Scolari said something like, well, the thing about Bill Fields is I knew him. W.C. Fields is Bill Fields.
Yeah.
Never forgot that. It's weird what stays in your memory.
Well, it's like that's no one ever refers to him as that. It's like what are you talking about? Well, it's almost like your Robert Altman story.
Oh, right.
It's Bob, and you're like, who is this?
Who's Bob? Or if but if you call James L. Brooks Jim Brooks, you can understand that. But Bill Fields.
Yeah. Like, are you the only one? Is that a nickname you have for him? Is that his actual thing? Scolari, I had Julia Duffy on, and she told me a funny story where when they first hired Scolari in season 3 or something, they were all doing a table read. I don't know if you've heard this story
No.
before. And Newhart turns to Barry Kemp, and about halfway through, and loud so everyone can hear, goes, "I told you I wanted the other guy from Bosom Buddies." Just to mess with him, to get Tom Hanks. And Scolari was like, "Oh no!" And then he was like, "I'm just kidding with you." And I was like, no reason to do that, but that is really funny.
Yeah. And reminds everyone who's
in charge.
Who's in charge? Yes.
Were you seeing a lot of, because you make the point that the star of the show sort of sets the tone, even as far as the showrunners.
Oh, completely.
And I always want to believe that Newhart set a good tone for that.
Oh, he did, absolutely.
You kind of managed to be in a lot of those shows where it seems like there was a pretty down to earth star of the show, like Candice Bergen.
Well, Candice Bergen and Mark Harmon are both great examples of how, if the fish stinks from the head down, it also, smells like perfume from the head down. Because both Murphy Brown and NCIS are shows where if you go on set, people know their lines, they're professional, they treat each other politely.
Like a job.
Yeah. And, it's not always the case.
Yeah. Also, side note, Mark Harmon is the best actor's name to say with a Boston accent.
Mark Harmon.
I love Mark Harmon on NCIS. You clearly have this affinity for older stuff, like a lot of us did, especially growing up around here, because between like 38 and SBK, and they showed a ton of sort of pre-1960s stuff because it was cheap.
Right.
But we got this education in the first 50 years of show business that was invaluable.
Right.
And I wonder how many of us that shaped with these sort of weird sci-fi shorts and the Bowery Boys.
Oh, right. The Little Rascals was on constantly.
And we never would have picked to watch that, I think, if given a choice.
Shirley Temple movies, they showed a lot of those.
The Little General. What is it called? The Little General? That was the one I feel like that was on all the time. Because I thought is it that one? The guy looks like Mark Twain.
Right. Like, and so I love to, there were these weird movies like The Rage of Paris and, what was that called? With William Powell. It'll come to me.
Oh, you mean Bill Powell?
Bill Powell. My good friend Bill Powell. In My Man Godfrey.
Oh, yeah. My Man Godfrey.
Which is a wonderful movie.
Which you would never have access to. Like, I always sort of lament the loss of having this stuff sort of inadvertently curated for you.
Yeah.
And, as a kid who didn't have any money growing up too, I couldn't go to the movies all the time. And I certainly couldn't go to the Brattle and see these classic movies that were revivalist movies. And it was sort of early days of no VHS. So we got to see this sort of classic cinema education.
Right, but it's also, it's nice when other people don't tell you what the classic movies are.
Right.
And you get to watch and decide, I actually like My Man Godfrey better than a lot of the screwball comedies. What's the one with the tiger and Katharine Hepburn?
Bringing Up Baby.
See, I can't stand that movie.
To me, it's too like affected. It's almost like they're trying to write a screwball comedy because they kind of get that what the formula is by that point.
Right.
Did you ever see the Madonna remake with Griffin Dunn?
Ooh. Yeah. But then there's like Ball of Fire, and I do love the Philadelphia Story, so I don't want to diss Katharine Hepburn at all because she's great. But it is fun when your brain tells you what you enjoy, and it's not someone saying, no, this is a great movie.
Yeah, to be able to, as a kid, develop your own taste is so important. And, so many people that I talk to, part of that is watching TV with their parents because they're mostly watching their parent watch and kind of decoding.
See, my parents didn't watch TV at all.
Watch it at all. They're just more academic readers.
I never saw my mother turn on the TV.
Wow.
And my dad watched sports.
Okay.
We grew up in Boston, so
you have to legally.
You have to. And football was on Sunday, but they were not. I mean, maybe news they watch, but and I still remember. I was born in 1960. I remember the first show I saw on color TV.
What was it, 66? Batman?
You're going to love it. Batman!
Yeah, yep.
Exactly.
Yeah, they sold a ton of TVs just because of Batman. What was that like? See, this sounds like a ridiculous question,
your mind.
I cannot imagine explaining to somebody. Like, the closest I can imagine is watching Wizard of Oz when it comes to color.
Right.
But you know what color looks like there, so it's not the same.
Yeah.
Just like... you can do this?
Well, it's that weird thing, too, because life is in color.
Right.
And then this art form is in black and white, and then suddenly it shifts. And you'd think that would make it more lifelike, but in fact, you're watching Batman, which is the craziest cartoon.
If that's lifelike, you have a very, very exciting life.
I love Batman.
It's fun. At the Hollywood Museum right now, they're doing a Batman 66 exhibition. And they have all the sets and all the costumes, and it's amazing. It's the Bat Bike and the Bat Cave, and it's well worth going if you find yourself back in Hollywood at any point in the next 6 months or something.
It's I hadn't thought of it, but my favorite kind of comedy is that kind of combination of absurd and realism. And I think Sabrina the Teenage Witch is very much on a line from Batman.
Yeah, and plays it straight. Right. That's the thing that people seem to miss, is that Batman's very silly, but Adam West is deadly serious in that show.
Right.
And even with Sabrina, it's
you go into the linen closet to go to the other realm, and that's just the way it works.
Yeah, people are playing like that's regular life.
Yeah.
And, one of the things I love about the take you had on Sabrina, when you kind of look at the history of that genre of show, which is strange that is a genre of show, almost to the specific, a witch in the house, is that it wasn't treated as the joke I always make is the 50s and the 80s obviously had a correlation.
Yeah.
So you saw a lot of these, we have a magical being in our house, we have to hide shows. My Favorite Martian, My Mother the Car, Bewitched,
and then
Genie,
and
then Alf,
which I love those all.
Yeah. And I always said if you kind of switched out the magical being with a gay son, it was pretty much the same kind of, we can't let the neighbors know that we have this. But Sabrina didn't go that track. It was more of the coming of age sort of allegory for sort of puberty and not in a heavy way. It managed to use that sitcom format and present it in a way that wasn't like we have to hide this. It was just we have to own this.
What I love is going back to your theory about after 5 seasons, shows get weird because they've run out of things. I could run all those tired TGIF plots through the magic
jump starting at season 6
blender. And now when Sabrina doesn't have a date, well, they make one out of Mando.
Right.
And it's it was both the challenge and the fun of doing that show. It
was amazing how that show changed TGIF. And by that, I mean, it affected how the other shows started.
Oh, did it?
Absolutely. So Family Matters, which I think was the lead-in, got sillier in that that show started as a spin-off of Perfect Strangers about a working class family in Chicago, and then Steve Urkel became the breakaway star. And when Sabrina became popular, they started doing episodes all of a sudden where Urkel invents a time machine or has a robot like out of nowhere, and they missed what made Sabrina work, I think, and whoever, not to disparage them, I don't know the people who made Family Matters, but they kind of saw the superficial, well, the kids like this is a time machine, and it got really bizarre, and I feel like they could have made it work if they managed to sort of get what you brought to that show.
Well, what about Teen Angel?
Teen Angel, or Aliens in the Family.
Yeah.
On.
Yeah.
Teen Angel was weird.
Well, because that was Al Jean and Mike Reiss.
Yeah.
And I consulted on it one day a week, and Larry Wilmore also worked on that show.
I forgot that he wrote on sitcoms for a
long time. Yeah. And by the way, he was really good at it.
Yeah, it's definitely a very specific skill set that I feel like 3-camera sitcoms get unfairly maligned now because they're so hard to do well.
Yeah.
And so people, especially younger comics and younger people that I know, they only know them from like the Disney Channel or the Teen Nick stuff. And it's like, watch Barney Miller, watch Taxi, watch Cheers, watch Sabrina.
Yeah.
Like it's
about consistency of characters.
Yeah, because it's a play. It's you can't rely on the sort of cutaways or the sort of cinematic comedic tricks a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And for some reason, someone has to really. I'm waiting for somebody to really like kickstart the 3-camera sitcom back again.
Well, it's interesting because I've got the TV guide right in front of me from Fall Preview, September 12th to 18th. It doesn't have a date.
It should be along the top in some of the newsprint pages inside. It'll be.
Where
I think
would
it's
it
probably
be?
1970.
So what caught my eye when I was first flipping through is this.
Yep.
The Mary Tyler Moore Show. Mary Tyler Moore finds herself in a Midwestern locale as she launches her own situation comedy series. She plays Mary Richards, 30-ish, unmarried, and getting a little desperate about it. She gets a job in a Minneapolis St. Paul TV newsroom and rents an apartment. Good for her. Renting an apartment.
All on her own.
The series producers and head writers Jim Brooks and Alan Burns are alumni of Room 222, which I loved, and He and She, which I never watched. And they are filling their scripts with snappy patter and surrounding their star with a cast of characters who are just that, characters. And this is the debut. So I love the Mary Tyler Moore Show. I was 10 when it came on. One of the differences between sitcoms then and sitcoms now is they've gotten a lot shorter.
Yes.
Like 4 minutes shorter. So this has had some ramifications. We've lost our title sequence, which we loved, right? And Mary Tyler Moore had a "You're Gonna Make It on Your Own."
Yeah. Sets the tone.
Right. Greatest American Hero. Like as a kid, I just loved those. And in fact, when Stephen Bochco just died this week, I went back and watched that Hill Street Blues opening with that beautiful song. Anyway, so the other thing you lost is what I actually have called the tuna fish sandwich moment.
Okay.
And it comes from Mary Tyler Moore. And Mary would be standing at that counter, between the
in her huge weird studio
the
apartment.
room that didn't exist, that we never saw, and the living room. And there'd be a knock on the door. Mary would say, "Come in." Rhoda would open the door and say, "Hey, Mare, what you doing?" She'd say, "Making a tuna fish sandwich. Do you want one?" And Rhoda would say, "No, thanks," and then get into the plot. And that moment was, it was a little bit of realism. It was a little bit of connection. Oh, she's the neighbor.
Right.
You cut to the 90s and FinCEN rules have been rescinded so they can show more commercials.
Right.
And I remember I was once working on a show that will rename nameless when the neighbor barged in and said, "Can I use your bathroom? I've got a deer draining in mine." So now we have no realism. We've become what Joel Hodgson, my sometime writing partner, used to call a joke delivery system.
Right.
And I miss the tuna fish sandwich moment.
Those quieter moments, which you're allowed to do in dramas now.
Right.
Which, when I look at, there's very few action shows now. They're procedurals.
Right.
Which is almost like just the quiet parts of the action shows in a lot of ways. It's the exact opposite of the way sitcoms
or as we like to look at them, the cheaper parts.
The cheaper parts, exactly. There's no car chase, but maybe we'll describe the car chase that just happened. But it's interesting how people, from an audience perspective, are okay with that, but they've been sort of trained to just have the peaks in a sitcom. So it's just the craziest parts.
Right. And I wonder if some of that too is a reliance on testing and the knobs, and if you have a laugh, the knobs go up, and if you have a quiet moment, I'm bored.
Yeah.
Although I actually wonder, now that people watch TV while on social media, if quieter moments could come back, because you want that little downtime,
like a break, or even because people time shift and they can essentially fast forward. I would never imagine doing this, but this is a boring part. They can sort of fast forward through it. But I do find that the sort of quiet moments in comedy have been sort of weirdly left by the wayside, and those are some of the best moments. Like a slow burn, I don't know when the last time I saw a slow burn on a sitcom was.
Right.
It's been ages.
I remember I wrote a script for Newhart, and I talk about it in the book, because it's I turned in my very first script, and the supervising producer comes in and says, "Great job, Nell, really funny," and then returns 20 minutes later to say that the showrunners wanted a page one rewrite.
Right.
And the advice they gave me was just joke, 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 joke. And then you go to the table read, and the line that gets the absolute biggest laugh is just Bob Newhart saying, "I feel bad."
With his classic pause.
With his classic pause, with his empathy, with his blinking. Someone said he blinks funny. And that moment was more important than, I've got a deer draining in my bathtub.
Right, and that's the thing that people, I can't speak for a generation, and I don't know if this is true for you as well, but the TV we watched growing up, those are the things that stick with me. Those are the moments that I find that I want to rewatch, or that are comforting, or that make you feel like you're participating in the show in a way, instead of just the craziness.
Right.
And being able to do both of those in a show, which I think Taxi did well, is hard. I think that might be part of the reason we don't see it as much too, is it's difficult. It takes a skill level that not everyone has.
Look, I love absurd. I'm obsessed with Another Period right now, which is on Comedy Central. And that reminds me a little of F Troop.
Yep.
And that kind of, we're just going to move into this historical period. We're not actually going to do anything more than maybe Wikipedia every now and then.
Or like Green Acres, which a friend of mine dubbed surrural. Was the sort of subgenre.
But did you watch F Troop? Do you know that at all?
Yeah.
Does it hold up? I'm always scared, but I also had a crush on Ken Berry.
Ken Berry of Mama's Family and Mayberry RFD fame. Larry Storch is still around. He lives in this area.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's 95. He does like all the signing conventions.
Oh, great.
But F Troop, I was never a big Westerns person, so I think that's why as a kid when it would come on, because I was like a Munsters Addams Family kid.
Yeah. Oh, I loved Addams Family
Addams
too.
Family I love. That's one way I illustrate the difference to people all the time, is like Munsters, funny, but that whole thing is that they are monsters and they're trying to be accepted.
Right.
And Addams Family, they have FU rich money. They don't care.
Yeah.
They're who they are, and everyone else just doesn't get it, and it's fine.
Yeah.
And it's such a weird take to have on a show. They're like just amazing.
Do you remember, it was very short-lived, Mel Brooks had a show When Things Were Rotten?
Yes.
Dick Gautier, and did I love that show.
Yeah.
They made 6 episodes, maybe? That's it?
And it's very. I think I've seen 2 episodes of it. They pop up every now and then. But he was just coming off Get Smart. I think it was this next thing, right? But
I love Get Smart too.
That's that perfect example of that tone.
Yeah.
And even Get Smart sometimes, like the peril would feel real.
Yeah.
And that's tough to get in a silly, intentionally silly show, which Batman didn't always get, but Get Smart did. And I wonder. Maybe it's just a tastes thing that people don't have a lot of stuff like that now.
Yeah.
But that's the stuff that I loved as a kid as well.
Right.
Because you felt like, not like you were getting away with something, but you're like, are other people seeing this?
Yeah.
How is this on the air? And that kind of thing. And being able to rewatch those when I was growing up in the 80s too, because we finally had reruns. Batman
right.
5 days a week.
Well, that's how I got to see Star Trek.
Yeah. And was that the first sci-fi show that you really fell in love with? Because you're a big sci-fi fan.
I love sci-fi. Yeah. Well, Star Trek became very important to me, and I didn't have a lot of fights with my parents, but it was on at 6 o'clock.
Yep. 56? Was it 56?
Yeah. Yep. And my that's when family dinner was.
Right.
And so we had this argument, and my mom insisted I be at family dinner. So at first I had only seen the last third of every Star Trek. and then found Twilight Zone, a little bit Outer Limits, but not as much as Twilight Zone. I really love the Twilight Zone.
Twilight Zone is, the thing I always say is that made us all better people.
Oh, that's nice.
The allegory of that show, without beating you over the head with it, although some of them do a little bit.
I've seen Rod Serling's typewriter.
Have you? Where was it?
So my friend Scott Berg, who's a biographer, his father was Rod Serling's manager.
Oh, wow.
And Rod Serling's widow gave it to Scott. So
that
he has
amazing. Just looking at that,
I know
the things that were written on that was. We were talking before we recorded about Dana Gould, and we were in LA a couple weeks ago, and we went to a night gallery exhibit with Dana.
Oh,
they had all the paintings,
I love night gallery.
All the actual
from the premiere.
Yeah, from all the episodes. The guy who painted them was there, and it was really cool to see the actual night gallery paintings.
Yeah,
and they had a horrifying mannequin of Rod Serling as well. But it's. I do also miss anthology shows. Dark
Shadows.
Dark Shadows was a big one. Did you watch the remake in 90?
No, I did not.
I'd be curious to hear what you think of it if you ever get a chance to see it. It tried to sort of reinvent Dark Shadows as Dynasty, like a nighttime soap, and really make it much more serious. And something about the sort of chintziness of that daytime soap made it scarier.
Yeah.
Because it was almost like a documentary sometimes. It's like the news is covering a vampire in Newport, Rhode Island. It's very strange. The mansion's still down in Newport. You can see the Dark Shadows mansion.
I should go do that. That would be fun.
It's pretty cool.
And Barnabas is still there because he lives forever.
Yes. Did you ever try to make Warehouse 13 has some sort of serious episodes in it, but were you ever drawn to do a harder sci-fi thing? Is that something you enjoy, or was it always sort of tinged with comedic stuff?
Oh, I would do, I loved Outlander, for example. And although I actually was thinking the other day, I'm such a fan, I probably wouldn't want to work on that show because I just enjoy it so much.
Can you watch your own things?
Never.
Yeah.
Never.
Same. Because you're just too critical of it. You can't get lost in the story.
Well, two things. It started, I used to watch, and then one day I was, when I was on Murphy Brown, and I was really proud of working on that show. It was such a quality show.
Yeah.
And then I start watching my first episode at home, and the first commercial was for a feminine hygiene product.
Wonderful.
And I thought, oh, that's right. We're selling crap.
Yeah.
And that kind of ruined it for me.
TV exists because of the commercials, not the other way around.
Exactly.
And I always say that good stuff getting on the air is despite of everything.
Yeah.
Although it's different now where they do that sort of product placement
which is worse.
Which is worse.
Yeah.
I love Fringe. Did you watch Fringe at all?
No.
Oh, you would love Fringe.
Oh, okay.
It takes place in Cambridge, actually, at Harvard.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like X-Files, but it's maybe my favorite sci-fi show ever.
Wow.
And the allegory of it is essentially just about letting people die. Like, let them go. It's okay.
Yeah.
But in a sci-fi way. And they were on the bubble, and they started getting product placement. And so, like, all of a sudden, they're all driving Leafs. And there's weirdly 2 minutes of all these different angles of the Leaf. And they're making sure they show them plug it in. It was very weird.
And it makes it very hard to shoot the show because advertisers have these very specific ways that you're allowed to shoot their products.
Right.
And, you know, you'll spend 15 minutes on a scene and an hour getting the car right for a 2-second shot.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a necessary evil if it helps get stuff made. But yeah, it's kind of horrific.
Yeah,
in a lot of ways, because you're trying to tell a story. You're not. Do you feel like a show?
You know, we did. Twizzlers was a sponsor of Warehouse 13 one season, and like it just gets worked in where they're looking at a clue and Pete will just pull a Twizzler out of his pocket and start gnawing on it.
Like he's Kojak for Twizzlers.
Yeah.
Which could be a great...
And they kept sending, you know, big barrels of it to the writer's room, and nobody was, you know...
You're like, this is not helping us like Twizzlers. Like, here come more Twizzlers. You'll only eat Twizzlers until you get in this there. It's funny when, like, I think the Dana Carvey sketch show did this, where they would not have been on the air, so they pitched to have each episode be sponsored by a different... So, like, one week it was like the Taco Bell Dana Carvey show, or they let them have it in the title, but they also let them just do whatever as long as they were mentioning the product.
Well, 30 Rock did a good job with sort of mocking themselves for accepting the product placements. But that's a change in over the course of the time I've been in TV.
I wonder if it's just looking at numbers going, it doesn't matter what we say as long as they say it. Like, the more they mention the product, it's okay.
Yeah.
Or I guess that's better. I don't know. It still sort of takes you out a little bit.
It does take you out of it.
Have you ever been driven to purchase a product because it was featured in anything, like even as a kid?
Oh, there must be like some Mattel toy that I was desperate for. And then we should also talk about, because we've talked about sitcoms and dramas and sci-fi. Again, flipping through this, and I see the Sonny and Cher variety show. And I guess American Idol is considered a variety show now.
Yeah, like America's Got Talent's probably a little more, but they're not driven by a host.
Yeah.
Which
I miss that.
I do too. I feel like we have this failure culture that people like to... They're not cheering for people, they're cheering against other people. Right.
Or you can't just cheer for someone, you have to boo someone else.
Yeah, it's the judgment factor.
You know what I call it? It's the winners and losers culture.
Yes.
And some people win, and if they win, then others must lose, and that's not the way the world actually works.
No, or certainly shouldn't. I have a theory that someone much smarter than me can research and write some sort of academic paper on, but that the political climate went south in the United States when sports became nationally televised.
Oh, interesting.
They're sort of parallel as far as I can see, because especially team sports, because bowling was the number one sport on television.
Right. Yeah.
But as national team sports went up, that's when we started getting, I don't care if my team wins as long as yours loses. And that's
the tribalism.
Yeah, it's sort of. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's other factors, but
no, that's it. It's only it.
And that's sort of prevalent in the scripted or reality TV show that's non-sports. It's sort of everything becomes competitive, which is back to curation. It's sort of the host said, these are acts I enjoy, whether they did or not.
Right.
And you sort of went, I like them. I must like things they like. And now it's just sort of, these people think they're good.
Right.
Make them prove it.
Yeah.
And I don't like watching things with that mindset. I don't know. Was there a variety show that you...
Carol Burnett.
Yeah.
And that the whole family watched. Actually, my mom might have watched that with us.
Yeah.
And that was, you know, it was fronted by a female. Yeah. A really funny female. And I had really funny female aunts, and my sisters were funny. And the idea that women weren't funny was such a mystery to me when I got into the real world.
Yeah, I really even didn't hear that till I started doing stand-up. And I'm like, what are you talking about? There's, like, objectively funny women. I don't understand how you could even say that.
Well, and I, had something growing up that no one had, let's say if you were born after 1975, which is I got to see a female host of The Tonight Show.
Yeah.
And Joan Rivers was hilarious. I thought she was funnier than Johnny Carson. Yeah. And that, between her and Mary Tyler Moore and Carol Burnett, it just seemed like who could ever doubt?
Yeah, how do we go back from that?
Yeah.
Like, it seems like in a lot of ways, as far as that, we're almost more progressive in the 70s.
Oh, completely. Look, I went to, the first time I went to the Emmys was in 1990. And of the 5 shows nominated for Best Comedy, 3.5 were created by women.
Was it Designing Women?
Designing Women, Golden Girls, Murphy Brown, Wonder Years, which was co-created by Carol Black. And then I think Cheers was the 5th one, and Murphy Brown won. And you're just like, okay, we're done.
Yeah. It took us this long, but fine.
Yeah, and that's never been matched.
It's very strange when you see... I feel like even women characters even by men, were written better then as well. Like, look at Mary Tyler Moore as an example. Although there's some cultural things where she's always like, oh, I need a date or whatever.
Well, that TV Guide description of,
I mean, one of the things...
She's getting a little desperate.
On her own. She's a whole 30. The thing I love about the fall previews is that because they're not psychic, they put all the shows on the same keel. So Mary Tyler Moore, which has become this massive phenomenon of television, is... sort of listed matter of fact with about 10 other shows that became nothing.
Right.
Or shows that they'll be like, this show is gonna be enormous. Like, the Tim Conway show.
Right. Or The Silent Force. Let me read this. Ward Fuller, Jason Hart, and Amelia Coate are an elite team of undercover crime fighters working for the government against, quote, the octopus of organized crime. Some snatches of dialogue will give you the flavor of the series. Bad guy, you're a government agent. You're not going to pull that trigger. Good guy, willing to bet your life on it? Bad guy, try me. Good guy, what do you want? Bad guy, just a small favor. Convince the senator the country doesn't need any more crime bills. What? Good guy, no, I'm going to fight you. Bad guy, want me to send you Corinne's head in a hat box? Oh my God, it goes on and on.
This is a long excerpt in this thing. It looks like the Mod Squad, but I don't even know what that is bizarre. And they, again, full page, it could be the next thing that lasts for 10 years.
Right, starring Ed Nelson, Percy Rodriguez, and Linda Day.
Percy Rodriguez is one of the few black actors that was on Star Trek. And he's the guy who did you probably know him best as the trailer voice for Jaws. He talks like this.
Oh.
He's a Canadian actor, and he's a great actor, and he couldn't get roles on stuff. But he had this amazing career in voiceover because it's such a good voice.
Yeah.
But even I have never heard of that show, and I'm maybe the only Percy Rodriguez fan in the world. So it's so weird to see sort of the paths not taken, or the shows that could have been that aren't.
Right.
And Mary Tyler Moore was just another show that year.
Yeah.
Which is bizarre. I mean, even if you look at just the MTM productions and how they changed everything.
By the way, my first job on Newhart was on the MTM lot, and they still had the old Gilligan's Island lagoon that during lunch hour, we'd walk down, and it was just a big tub filled with crap.
Rancid water.
And that was... And that's Hollywood.
There's Hollywood for you. Were you of your Gilligan's Island?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That was great.
It's one of the things you mentioned in the book, and it was odd for me because this is actually the same wording I use when I say this all the time about like going through the looking glass.
Yeah.
When you grow up here, which feels a million miles away from this stuff, and you're on the set, or for you was the recreation of the Bob Newhart show set. it's really uncanny and surreal to all of a sudden be in the thing you watched.
It is. And I always still get a thrill. The other thing you forget, even if you're in the business a long time, is how small everything is in real life. Like Gilligan's Lagoon. And I went to see Dancing with the Stars because my friend Marissa Winokur was on it. And, you know, I've been in the business decades, and I go in and go, wow, it's so small.
It's part of it, you're like, it's all a lie. But you're also like, oh, it's also attainable in a weird way. Like, to me, when I go to LA, it feels very weirdly small. You're like, oh, it's just kind of all here.
Yeah,
it's just the thing.
But it is true that all TV is fake.
Yes,
and even the TV you think is real, you're watching a late night host interview an actor, and it seems like, oh, they're just being themselves. It's all fake.
Describing to people the pre-interview is a thing. They're like, what? I'm like, yeah. There's certain guests who don't have to do it.
Right. The only time TV isn't fake is when it's really disturbing.
Yeah, something goes wrong.
Bud Dwyer, or something horrific. That the Challenger.
I was in school when we saw that.
Yeah,
I was 6, I think. And we showed it to us in school. It was bizarre.
Yeah.
Although there's a Punky Brewster that addresses it.
Really? Yeah. A very special episode of Punky Brewster? Yeah, they do a very special.
Oh, they all were. But that one, they had the most. But there's one where she wanted to be an astronaut, which they had established earlier in the season. And so maybe a month after the Challenger explosion, they have an episode about them seeing it.
Good for them.
Which is, you would never get now. I feel that sort of current events are almost never addressed.
Well, that's why it will be interesting to see what they do with the new Murphy Brown.
Yes, which is all current events.
Yeah.
Although, weirdly, when I've revisited that show, it still holds up without you having to be tied. It does.
Yeah.
Some of the jokes you miss. But
right.
It's not like when I've gone back and rewatched like old Weekend Updates. I'm like maybe 10% mix.
Oh, interesting.
Because I'm like, what did Walter Mondale do this week? I don't know what that's a reference to.
Right.
It's so specific. And Murphy Brown's slightly more general, like at least if you know.
Well, there's a story too.
Yeah.
You know, Murphy sees Miles' penis.
Right.
You know?
Every week, though. That was the weirdest part.
Weird.
Yeah. And she started calling them kilometers. Did you, when you were writing for that show, did they make you put in stuff? Like they were like, here's things going on that you have to put in the script? Or was it like, we have the script and the storyline, now let's pepper it with current events?
It was part of their lives. So I think if you could be as organic, a word I hate, but I think it's appropriate here, that's what worked. You know, we did a couple of episodes where they sent a crew to Washington, and you actually had Bob Dole on camera,
right.
You know, saying, I saw her push a nun once,
right.
You know, that kind of thing. But, you know, and the secretaries...
Swapping them out weekly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember Paul Rubens came on. I think he got nominated for an Emmy for it, actually.
Oh, did he?
But it was right after the controversy.
Well, I remember I was off the show at this time, but I went to... My friends were still running it. So I came to watch a shooting, and I came in through the back, and there were all these extras hanging out there. And I look at one extra, and I'm like, wow, he's really good looking. Why is he just an extra? And it was JFK Jr.
Oh, just hanging out.
Well, he played a secretary.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Because
he was launching his magazine, George.
Cindy Crawford on the cover was the first issue.
That's right. Dressed like George Washington.
But that was kind of influenced by Spy Magazine, wasn't it, George? It seemed like him trying to do that sort of
But for
thing.
politics, yeah.
Yeah. That's so bizarre that those things would mix in that world where you wouldn't, out of context, you're sort of like, oh, of course, yeah, he would be here.
Right.
But also, why would he be here?
Why would he? Well, but that's also like you're a real person with a real magazine on this fake news show. Right. And it gets
But how
strange.
Does that fit in for you as a TV writer who's very aware of the facade of these things? Then you get to go put words in the mouth of the actual president.
Oh, yeah, that was cool.
Which is got to be amazing, but also you're like, TV's fake, but this isn't and these aren't his words, but they are now. Like he's owning it. Like that. I mean, maybe I overthink things, but that would just be such a weird existential moment for me.
Well, it's a little like in broadcast news when Albert Brooks says, I say it here, it comes out there.
Right.
But that's the gig, and that's what's fun about it. And the craft, to use another word that I don't really like, but it's correct here, is to get inside different people's heads and get their voice. And one of the hardest parts of writing a memoir was trying to figure out what my own voice was.
Right.
And I worried a lot that the Nell character wasn't very likable.
She could have been a little bit more fleshed out.
Yeah. No, but the problem with real life is we're not consistent. And sometimes I'm aggressive and sometimes I'm not.
It's situational.
Sometimes I go out of my way to help people, but not every single time.
Full disclosure, she tripped me when I came in, but did help me out. But I wonder if that's like you didn't come from the stand-up world, but a lot of the people that you gravitated towards or that were your friends came to writing through performing.
Right. I don't like improv.
Right.
And it makes me very anxious.
Right.
And that's just to watch it.
Oh, same, me too.
Oh, really?
I'm like, what? This is going to be bad.
Well, but it's just, I'm a fan of the funniest, not the fastest. And sometimes they're the same. And, I've seen plenty of Groundling shows that I walked out of there saying they're amazing. But by and large, I really like to come at it. I talk about my process as like an optometrist with trying different lenses and better, worse. Is this good? Is that good? And that's how I write my jokes.
Right. Which is very similar to most people's stand-up craft.
Yeah.
But I wonder because you've always kind of written for other people, if that's what made it sort of harder for you to find your character almost in this book. I think you succeed.
Oh, good.
But it's funny, like Penn Jillette is a friend of yours who has always had a very confident, strong Penn Jillette character.
Right.
And so and Joel Hodgson and all these people, so it's funny.
But Joel's got a very different voice.
Oh yes, especially his early days where he was. You were like, is this guy okay?
Remember when he said, "Nell, where is the love?"
But you wrote on TV Wheel, right?
I did write on TV Wheel, and Joel was also the magic supervisor on Sabrina.
Right.
There's even an episode called Magic Joel, which is about a high school magician who Sabrina helps out when he needs a little
actual magic.
Actual magic, yeah.
TV Wheel fascinates me because it's to your point where Joel said we're like joke machines or whatever he said, joke delivery systems.
Yeah.
That is almost like him engineering a mechanical joke delivery system.
That's exactly right.
But still has an
Well, let me just explain. So the TV Wheel was and I remember when I was sitting in his living room when Joel said, I think I thought of a new way to shoot a TV show. And he told me about it, which was to build, I think it was like a 60-foot Lazy Susan with a hole cut out in the middle. And you put the camera there and the wheel turns. And it solved the problem, which was SNL never knew how to end a sketch.
And they still don't.
And what the TV Wheel allowed you to do is you would just start the wheel moving and you'd be in the next sketch without ever having to cut and then open on a new place. And it was so ingenious. I still remember after he told me, I said, I have to go home. And he said, what's wrong? And I just said, I'll call you later. And I called him later and said, I'm sitting here trying to come up with a new sitcom idea, and you just invented a new way to shoot a TV show.
In 50 years if we've been shooting these, somehow there's something someone didn't think of.
Yeah, and his brain is transcendent. He's so smart. And so HBO buys a pilot for the TV Wheel, and he got to build it, and it used a lot of forced perspective. And that's where I met Nick Bakay, who became the voice of Salem, the cat, and Morwenna Banks, who's
I love her,
a genius.
She was on SNL for
2 days.
2 days, yeah. And
I think she holds the record for the shortest.
She probably does. I think Laurie Metcalf's up there too. She was, I think, another week
Right.
or something. Or Catherine O'Hara quit before the first episode.
Oh.
She was supposed to be on for good reason.
And Paul Feig was on it. And Judd Apatow was one of the writers.
I think was on it. And Andy Kindler.
Yeah.
And Steve Banos. And it was...
Not a lot of diversity now that I'm thinking about it. That was bad.
Well, one of the only women on the show?
And
maybe?
Any people of color? Oh, well.
No. Although, no, none.
It was the
There
90s.
were some Jewish people. Isn't that good enough for everybody?
So we shot one, and I thought it went great.
I loved it.
And HBO did not agree.
That was around the time that they greenlit Mr. Show, I think, too. I'm wondering if they were like, we'll do 3 sketch show pilots and we'll pick up one.
Yeah. I do love Mr. Show.
I do love Mr. Show, too. I feel like Mr. Show was probably edgier, and HBO was still at that time where they were like, we can show boobs and swear, so we should.
Right. I mean, Joel isn't edgy.
No, it was very sweet, that show.
But that's why Mystery Science Theater worked.
Yes.
Was because he loved those movies. I mean, he could tease them like you would a little brother.
Yeah.
And make fun of them. But I think you always felt like there was respect that they even got made.
Yeah, it was. They appreciated the sincerity of it, and like that's the other thing I always cite as something that sort of taught a lot of us how to do this was Mad Magazine.
Right.
Because those parodies would, first of all, understand the show so well they would distill it in 2 or 3 pages, but partly because they actually really enjoyed the things they were parodying. And that seems a little lost now, too, where it's very just snarky, sort of hateful put-downs.
That's interesting. I still remember the Mad Magazine parody of Mary Tyler Moore. I think it was called Mary Taylor Made.
That's another way, as kids in sort of a pre-VHS age, you could sort of watch a show you liked by reading the Mad Magazine over and over again, which is a lot of us weirdly did, where you're like, I can't watch it.
But it's also that overlap you were talking about of John Kennedy Jr. being on Murphy Brown, and now you're watching the show, and then you're reading in the magazine the parody, and so you're both part of the fan base and the mocking. Yeah, of this thing.
On it. It's sort of interactive television pre social media.
Yeah,
in a lot of ways. Well, the thing I miss, and I don't know if you felt this as a sci-fi fan, was if you ran into other people who liked Star Trek or had seen My Man Godfrey and loved it, you were like, we're friends.
Yeah.
It was because it was unusual. It was like, we have similar interests now. I bet we'll get along.
Yeah.
And that's lost a little bit now because of the way people can kind of just find stuff they already like.
Yeah, no, Monty Python was very much that, and that came on when I was in high school. And, you would greet people with, hello, Mrs. Premise, hello, Mrs. Conclusion, and that's how you knew you were kindred spirits.
Right, they've seen this, they know. And again, PBS aired that.
That was so great, and I listened to the album, and that was really eye-opening. And, people say, too, like, do you think comedy's as good now? And I think comedy grows and it shifts and it responds. And, it's every new generation gets their fans. And, Bob Hope dies and nobody knows. My kids don't know who David Letterman is. Yeah. They're 20 and 18.
Yeah, it doesn't take long for the generational shift to happen. Yeah. And the other thing I would say about comedy is that it's not a genre, it's a medium in a lot of ways because it's so varied. You can't just go, let's go see comedy.
Yeah.
Because it's so wide, it's so different. And you're not gonna, it's like saying, let's go listen music.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, this
that's
might not
true.
be for you. And so that, in that respect, I think it changes a lot too, or what people think of as like mainstream comedy. But even Monty Python is again not a very diverse cast, but the women who were on it are unbelievably good, and so good that they sort of managed to become memorable and people would know their names even though they really weren't presented very well on the show.
But meanwhile, SNL comes on around the same time. And, you have Gilda Lorraine and Jane Curtin, who was actually my favorite.
Jane Curtin's my favorite. Another
Really?
Boston person, grew up in Cambridge. She went to Northeastern, the only thing I'm proud of going to Northeastern for. But I love Kate and Allie. I don't know if you
Yeah,
watch the
sure.
show. That show holds up so well.
But see, that's another show. It got no respect. Who created that?
It was another woman.
It was a woman, right?
Yeah, and it was on that CBS Monday night lineup with Newhart and Designing Women and Murphy Brown later. Weirdly, Monday night CBS was like a woman-heavy creator show. And was on for 7 seasons.
Yeah.
And is a really small character show. The thing I love about that show is it's 2 women who feel really like friends. And the cold opens to the show would just be them walking around New York talking about something with no joke sometimes. And every episode would end with the 2 of them on the couch, sort of like reflecting.
Yeah.
And it was just a nice show that was all character and dialogue and was just, it seems very timeless.
Sherry Cohen is the name of the creator. Sometimes these shows fall through like the press cracks, and
I guess it didn't have any controversies or like anything.
Right.
They weren't doing very special episodes and stuff. It's a very quiet show, which is kind of what I love about it. Yeah. And Jane Curtin's amazing on it. And
she's always good. Yeah, she's great.
She didn't get used well enough, I think. Oh, she was in did you ever see How to Beat the High Cost of Living?
No.
Oh, it's amazing. It's the first thing she did with Susan St. James, and it's her, Susan St. James, and I forget who the third actress is, but they're all housewives who plan a heist. They're going to knock over a mall. I forget to help the school or something.
Oh, that sounds fun.
But it's really fun. It's from about 1980, and she's one of those actors that I'm like, she should have been a movie star. Like, she should have been in more movies. And one of the reasons I couldn't enjoy Third Rock from the Sun, because I was like, they're not using Jane Curtin like I'd like to see them use her.
That's so funny. I get that. Oh, and then game shows. I loved game shows. Concentration. Did you watch those? Those were...
Oh, yeah. Those were sort of a treat because you were homesick, usually.
That's right. Joker's Wild.
Joker's Wild, I loved.
Joker's... Why? Nobody watches that anymore.
Although they brought it back with Snoop Dogg hosting it in primetime this year.
No, they didn't.
They did, which is insane.
That's crazy.
They've been, and it might just be because we're sort of a bit creatively devoid of things, but this year they brought back all these 70s game shows in primetime. Like Alec Baldwin hosted To Tell the Truth or What's My Line.
Oh, that's right. I do remember that.
Really bizarre. And they started doing Family Feud in primetime again. But I always loved Pressure Luck, obviously.
Yeah.
Good one. And Price is Right was like...
Price is Right. Why was that so entertaining as a kid?
I think the variety was part of it, because you wouldn't know what games they were going to do.
Oh, wait, but let's make a deal.
Let's make a deal. Monty Hall makes me anxious and impressed by him every episode I watch.
I still think, in my purse, should I just throw in a screwdriver?
Yeah. Foreign coin? I don't know. I found out something that was disappointing about that show, in that the costume thing was organic and that people started wearing crazy costumes.
Oh, yeah.
But it became a thing where the studio wouldn't let you come in with a costume and you had to rent one from them.
Oh.
Which you notice in the show, all of a sudden the costumes get way more professional.
That's so funny. So I'm going to read this because I keep going back. One of us cares about structure of this podcast. McCloud. Sam No Middle Initial McCloud is a deputy marshal from Taos, New Mexico. He totes a walnut-handled six-shooter, chews matchsticks, because that's how you know what a character trait is. Yep. You choose matchsticks.
The showrunner goes, or the network exec
and
goes,
says, there you go. So back in the aughts, USA comes to me and says, we want to reboot McCloud with Brett Butler. And it was they were spinning through all the old Universal, Kojak. They wanted to bring back
because they had run the reruns forever, so they were probably they get good ratings on our channel.
So I actually thought this was a brilliant idea.
That's actually pretty cool.
And I wrote it, and I loved working with Brett Butler. And someone recently asked, what are your regrets? And I actually brought up that they didn't make the McCloud reboot with Brett Butler.
Did they shoot a pilot? Or
no, they did not. They went with Kojak instead.
I don't even remember that, the remake of Kojak.
Yeah.
That would have been much more interesting.
Well, the idea too was like she was in New York City was the setup, and she actually rode horses. And
okay, was it modern? Set in modern?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did she chew matchsticks?
Maybe that was.
You missed the matchsticks. They're not going to remake it.
The deep character work that comes with chewing matchsticks.
I loved her sitcom. It was Grace Under Fire.
Yeah.
And it was. I always lament the loss of blue collar sitcoms because everything's aspirational or laugh at now.
Yeah.
And that was sort of post Roseanne, one of the last kind of really, plus Dave Thomas, because I'm an SCTV.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, me too. I mean, Catherine O'Hara's the funniest.
I think like Conan is a huge SCTV person as well. And that show's so weird. And I feel like you show that to people and they either love it or they're like, I'm kind of scared of this and I don't understand.
But isn't it? It's a lot of Mad Magazine stuff.
It is.
Yeah.
Those mashup parodies. Like, remember they did.
Yeah.
Their final season they did on Cinemax so they could do full-length parodies. They would do like a 45-minute of just one thing. And they did one that was a mashup of Das Boat and Porky's. And it was so weird, so bizarre. And then they did one that was just all trying to make a sequel to It's a Wonderful Life called It's a Wonderful Film.
Yeah.
And it was the movie and the sort of weird behind the scenes, but they were like short films. It was so weird. And I'm like, this is just the best. And
that shaped. Oh, I'm sad I didn't actually mention SCTV in my book. I don't know if you picked this up, but in Just the Funny Parts, I really did try to do sort of this history of the comedy. And one thing I couldn't fit in was Tom Lehrer. And he was really important to me growing up and also from this area.
Yeah. Would you hear him on the radio mostly?
No, in Evening Wasted, his albums were amazing. And, unlike Monty Python, which my parents didn't like, my parents loved Tom Lehrer. I think they went to one of his shows and it was like, what's that like? But also I missed SCTV.
It does.
I should have.
I don't think it gets mentioned enough now, weirdly.
Yeah.
And it's a little harder to see because they didn't get music rights to anything they used.
Oh, okay.
They didn't know.
Yeah.
So they were using Led Zeppelin and all this stuff. So much of it never re-aired because a lot of them came from radio or Dave Thomas did and Rick Moranis, and you could just play whatever. So that's what they did. And then they were like, oh, you needed to get a clearance for that, which really happened later. Because some of their funniest sketches they have Joe Flaherty does an amazing Slim Whitman, and it's Slim Whitman covering Stairway to Heaven. It's almost like I actually want to listen to that. Or all the Schmengies, they do one that's the Schmengies tribute to John Williams,
right? And
there's like polka versions of Jaws and the Star Wars theme and Superman.
Under parody, you should be able to do that.
They couldn't get the rights, so Shout Factory put out the discs, and it ruins the sketch because they play like just generic polka music over that part. But it's like those are really well arranged polka versions of those songs, which makes it so much funnier. Yeah. And again, I think that comes from a place of we really like this stuff. Like we enjoy polka music because we grew up with whatever. And part of that's missing, I think. Maybe. I don't know.
And it's also that intersection of all the pop culture where, you're taking the music and making fun of it, but in a loving way.
Yeah, because you're like, these guys would try to do the Star Wars suite as a polka song. There's John Candy's dressed as Jaws, and this line I quote with my wife all the time is he just goes, I'm the fish from the movie. It's like the weirdest thing to say. It's just so bizarre.
I'm the fish
from the movie. Are sitcoms your favorite thing to write? Because you've written so many different sort of genres of comedy that don't all necessarily translate to each other, from like more serious sort of journalist pieces to sitcoms to hour-long
stuff. And animation and
late night stuff, which is a totally different thing. Is it all kind of the same to you, or does it have like a different...
I just did an event with Conan O'Brien in LA because he and I... were in offices next to each other on my very first job. On the show that will not be named. And he on stage said, Nell loves writing jokes. And he said, I like thinking up silly things, but she really likes writing jokes. And I do. I think that laughter is a sense of impact, and it's positive impact. Nobody ever says like, I hate you, you made me laugh.
While I was doing surgery.
Right, that's the one time when someone has stitches, and therefore laughter is not the best medicine.
In fact, it's the worst.
It is the worst. And so, like, just writing a joke that lands is my favorite thing. And I know that, like, it seems tiny, but that's why, too, writing for President Obama is so satisfying.
But he also nailed stuff. Like, nothing's worse than seeing someone who's not funny deliver funny jokes. And his timing is amazing.
Right.
He's just funny. Like, he
gets it.
You wrote a lot of Hillary stuff for the Al.
I wrote some, right? Yeah. I wrote the turn joke of this is such a special event. I took a break from my rigorous nap schedule to be here.
Yeah, I remember I was actually flying back from LA. I had gone to Dana Gould's the premiere of his IFC show. Yeah. And I was flying back and I watched that on the plane, and I was like, whoever she got to write this is hilarious. It's like, I've never seen her deliver anything funny.
Yeah, Jeff Nussbaum was our leader.
It's weird how that stuff affects the world, though, a little bit, because you wrote for Obama the year that Trump's origin story.
I had nothing to do with that.
No, you didn't write the Trump stuff.
I did not.
Like, just being remotely involved in that, you're like, this is weird.
Well, and it was also the year that they raided Bin Laden's compound.
He was delivering jokes.
So that was intense.
Yeah, that's not happening on Newhart. Like, Bob didn't, he's like, we got Hussein. I gave the order.
But really, when you write for people like Bob Newhart or Nick Bakay or Caroline Rea or President Obama, you're really playing doubles with Serena Williams.
Yeah.
And I say, if you can just get your serve in, they'll do all the rest of the work.
Right.
So it's just fun to be part of that. It's writing as a team sport.
Yeah.
And I never feel like that should be me.
Yeah.
If anything, I always feel like, oh, they're raising the level.
That's why you never did stand up.
Yeah.
You're well adjusted in that way. It's not, oh, me. Is there because you're a huge champion of, and we've talked about it here, of female comedy and these very funny women who've done amazing things and don't necessarily get the spotlight they deserve. Is there anyone that you think is overlooked, or who did shows or was someone you watched growing up, or even somebody that you work with or did a show that more people should have discovered? Or?
Oh, what a good question. Let me think. There was just, I didn't read it, but there was just an article about how True Detective came out at the same time as a female-driven show. Do you remember that?
Oh, another detective show?
Yeah, and all the TV critics are overwhelmingly male, and everyone was like, "This True Detective is the greatest thing," and the other show didn't last, and it does show why representation everywhere is important. But I love Broad City. Yep. I love Another Period. I think they're both just funny, but also bring in the experiences, because I don't think there's a difference in the senses of humor, but I do think there's a difference in what your experiences are, what your perspective is.
Right. What you bring up about pregnancy in the book.
Yeah.
The sense of smell change thing that a guy would never.
Right. So I write a Warehouse 13 episode where Micah gets pregnant, and I gave her, in the outline, I wrote in that she had an acute sense of smell, which is something that happened to me. And I'm getting notes on the outline, and one of the executives says, so that smell thing, is that real? And I say, yes. And he goes, really? And like, he didn't believe me. And I realized that on this call, there are 7 people, and I'm the only one who's ever been pregnant. And they're all telling me what it's like.
It's an unusual thing. Like, a lot of people get pregnant.
Yeah.
You would think they'd have more people represented that way. Do you think things have gotten better is not the right word, more fair is not the right word, but more representative in a natural way?
I don't know. I wish I could say yes. point to. There's more women in TV, but there's more TV now. And I still see pockets where, it's hard to cheer when a staff of 20 has 2 instead of just one female writer on it. So there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, I mean, I see someone like Amy Sedaris, who I absolutely love. And like,
she's
she should
amazing.
have had a talk show. Like, she should have been hosting a late night show.
Yeah, you know what? Caroline Rea should be a bigger star than she is.
She was amazing. I don't know if she did any sitcoms or any acting stuff after Sabrina. I feel
Not
it's
enough.
just stand-up. Like, I've seen her just touring doing stand-up, and she's the kind of person that I'm like, she should be in a movie. Like, she could easily be in a comedy,
Right. No, I feel like, why Amy Schumer and not Caroline Rea?
Yeah, I mean, but Caroline Rea, although thinking about it, she on stage does do a lot of sort of similar,
and was doing them a long time ago.
But I find her much more likable.
So whether it's another sitcom or a drama, she's actually a really good actress. She's very warm. She's very appealing. So
that's why I always was like, I want to see her in more stuff, or even like guest starring and stuff. Like, I think she popped up on like Drew Carey show or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, she should be a regular on a different show, like with a slightly different. She can do more than just that, and that's not normal for a lot of stand-ups.
Yeah, so why Martin Short and not Caroline Rea?
Yeah, well, that was when everyone was getting a talk show as well.
Yeah.
If you remember that weird mid-'90s thing. I think Spike Furstein got a show at that time.
Oh, Spike Furstein, yeah.
Yeah, did you remember him on the team?
Yeah, he was at Late Night with me, too.
Yeah, 'cause
that was
he even
weird.
got a talk show.
Do you know, and the story behind that was he gave a toast at a wedding that was so funny, and it was someone in the show business that they gave him a talk show. That's how men.
That's
how white men
can get things. What wedding was this? I'd like to know.
Not to go into lean in mode, but all the studies show that men get promotions based on potential, and women get them on experience.
Right.
So
results versus what we think you might be able to do.
Yeah, results versus a wedding toast.
Yes, yeah. Give this guy a life-changing career. Yeah, it's I don't know how it can change. I feel like that people are trying, but it's and you walk the walk too. Like, you've recommended people, I think based on like Twitter sometimes too, for jobs, which thank you for doing that.
Oh, well, that's fun. And I always try to make clear I don't get anyone jobs. Their talent gets them the jobs. But there's this belief that there's a pipeline problem.
Right.
And I don't buy into that. I call it the broken doorbell problem.
Right.
That the talent is out there on the doorstep ringing the bell, and people aren't opening the door. So more doors opened.
Yeah, which is...
there, we solved it.
We solved it. Open more doors, everybody. Get rid of your locks, open your doors.
And keep watching TV.
Keep watching TV while the doors open, and more women will be able to do these things. Is there a dream project that you have that, I mean, the Brett Butler show is kind of a regret, but is there something that you're like, this is what I want to see that I can do?
Oh, well, I've got a stack of spec movies I would love to direct, and there is a TV show I wrote years ago called Times Like These, which was set in the future, and it had a really Sabrina-like vibe, and I'd love to do that.
We're doing more weird sci-fi concepts as comedies and stuff now more than ever. I still can't believe Last Man on Earth got made when I watched that show.
Oh, I enjoy that show.
It's great, but I'm like, how is this on?
Yeah.
Which is the best sort of thing when we're seeing these sort of weird things that connect with us. Well, thank you so much for doing this. It's been
thank you.
You're very welcome, and you can watch all the TV you want now, I imagine, right? Do you still keep to the 30 minutes?
I do. But I've saved about 150.
So, that's good. Yeah. Like in case you get an illness or something. If I break my leg and I'm bedridden.
No, I actually am saving the wire for, recovering from radiation or something.
That's one show that I've had on the pile, and I'm like, it's going to really depress me.
Yeah.
I know it's good, but I just can't.
So funny. Me too.
That, and there's a couple.
Will you be my best friend?
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Yes. Sign this contract. It'll be fine. Thank you so much.
You're funny.
How great is she? She's accomplished so much stuff and couldn't be nicer. Love talking to her. Want to thank her again for taking the time to sit down and talk to little old me. Again, buy her book, Just the Funny Parts. It is very, very good, and that is no surprise because she is very, very good. In addition, you can email me if you have guest requests or any questions about the show. Do so at tvguidancecounselor@gmail.com or at kenandicanread.com. Love hearing from you guys. I want to thank you guys again for the Patreon. You guys have gone above and beyond. My God, that is just amazing, and I am forever grateful. It is not necessary. It is a huge help to the show. If you have done it, thank you. If you'd like to do it, thank you for even just wanting to. And if you haven't, no big deal. I just appreciate you listening. We have brand new episodes each and every Wednesday, so hopefully we'll see you again next time on a brand new edition of TV Guidance Counselor.
30-ish, unmarried, and getting a little desperate about it. She gets a job in a Minneapolis St. Paul TV newsroom and rents an apartment. Good for her. Renting an apartment.
All on her own.